The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Clarence House as King Charles III stood at his study window, holding a letter that would change everything. The crisp autumn air of 2016 carried with it the scent of fallen leaves and the promise of transformation, though he could not have known it then. The letter was from his younger son Harry, written in the familiar scrawl that brought back memories of school reports and birthday cards from years past. "Father," the letter began, "I need to speak with you about someone very important in my life." Charles set down his morning tea, the fine china making barely a sound against the saucer. At 68, he had learned to read between the lines of his son's communications. This was not about military duties or charitable engagements. This was about matters of the heart, and, in the House of Windsor, matters of the heart were never simple. The weeks that followed brought whispered conversations in palace corridors and carefully orchestrated meetings in private drawing rooms. Charles found himself in the peculiar position of learning about a young American actress named Meghan Markle, whose life was about to intersect with his family's in ways that none of them could have anticipated. Meghan herself was 3,000 miles away in Toronto, unaware that her name was being discussed in the highest circles of British royalty. She was filming the 7th season of Suits, playing Rachel Zane with the confidence and grace that had made her a recognizable face on television screens around the world. Her trailer was modest but comfortable, filled with books about social justice and women's rights, causes that had driven her activism long before fame had found her. The irony was not lost on those who knew her well. Here was a woman who had spent years advocating for equality and speaking out against the very institutional structures that she would soon find herself at the center of. Her friend Jessica Mulroney often teased her about the contradiction, but Meghan had always believed that change came from within, that systems could be transformed by those brave enough to enter them with pure intentions. Charles, meanwhile, was experiencing his own internal struggle. As heir to the throne, he had spent decades preparing for the role he would one day assume, understanding that every decision, every relationship, every public appearance would be scrutinized and analyzed. The lessons of his first marriage to Diana had taught him about the destructive power of media attention and public pressure. He had watched his beloved sons grow up under the relentless gaze of cameras and critics, and he was determined to protect them from unnecessary pain. Yet there was something in Harry's voice when he spoke about Meghan that reminded Charles of his own feelings for Camilla all those years ago. It was the sound of a man who had found his anchor in a turbulent world, someone who understood him not as a prince but as a person. Charles knew that feeling intimately, and he recognized its profound importance. The first time Charles heard Meghan's name spoken aloud was during a private dinner with Harry at Highgrove House. The conversation had meandered through topics of duty and family, but Harry's restlessness was apparent. Finally, as they sat in the drawing room with brandy and the crackling of logs in the fireplace, Harry spoke the words that would begin to reshape their family's future. "I've met someone, someone extraordinary." Charles had listened as his son described a woman who seemed to embody everything Harry had been searching for. She was intelligent and articulate, passionate about humanitarian causes, and possessed an inner strength that complemented Harry's own warrior spirit. But, more than that, she made Harry laugh in a way Charles had not heard since before Diana's death. The weight of that revelation settled on Charles like a mantle. He understood, perhaps better than most, the complexity of finding love within the confines of royal duty. His own path to happiness with Camilla had been fraught with obstacles and public disapproval. He had no desire to see his son face similar challenges, yet he knew that the road ahead would be anything but simple. As autumn turned to winter, Charles found himself thinking more and more about this American actress who had captured his son's heart. He began to research her background, not through official channels but through quiet conversations with trusted advisors. What he learned impressed him. Meghan Markle was not seeking fame or fortune through her relationship with Harry. She had built her own successful career and used her platform to advocate for causes she believed in. The moment that would prove pivotal came during the Christmas holidays of 2016. Harry had requested permission to bring Meghan to Sandringham, a break from royal protocol that would signal the seriousness of their relationship. Charles spent long nights walking the estate grounds, considering the implications of this decision. On Christmas morning, as the family gathered for their traditional service at St. Mary Magdalene Church, Charles made a choice that would echo through the years to come. He pulled Harry aside and gave him the answer he had been hoping for. Meghan was welcome at Sandringham, not as a guest but as family. That decision marked the beginning of Charles's direct involvement in changing Meghan's life, though neither he nor she fully understood it at the time. By opening the doors of the royal family to her, he was setting in motion a series of events that would transform not only her existence but the very nature of the monarchy itself. Meghan received the invitation while she was spending Christmas with friends in California. The phone call from Harry came late at night, his voice filled with excitement and nervousness. As she listened to him describe the royal Christmas traditions and the family she would soon meet, Meghan felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation that would become familiar to her in the months ahead. The woman who had once been a briefcase model on Deal or No Deal and had worked as a freelance calligrapher to make ends meet was now being invited into the most exclusive family circle in the world. It was a Cinderella story, but Meghan was wise enough to understand that real life was more complex than fairy tales. Charles, for his part, began to prepare for the changes that Meghan's presence would bring. He understood that she represented something new for the royal family, a fresh perspective that could help them connect with a changing world. But he also knew that change, even positive change, was never easy for an institution that had survived for over 1,000 years by honoring tradition. The stage was set for a transformation that none of them could have fully anticipated. Charles had made the first move in what would become a complex chess game of family dynamics, public relations, and personal growth. His decision to welcome Meghan into the family fold was motivated by love for his son and a recognition that the monarchy needed to evolve to remain relevant. As the new year dawned, 3 lives hung in the balance of decisions yet to be made. Charles stood ready to guide his family through uncharted waters, Harry prepared to introduce the woman he loved to a world that could be both magical and merciless, and Meghan gathered her courage for a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about herself and her place in the world. The seeds of change had been planted, and Charles had played the role of gardener, carefully preparing the soil for growth. What would bloom from his efforts remained to be seen, but the future of the House of Windsor had already begun to shift in ways both subtle and profound. The morning of January 15, 2017, would forever be etched in Meghan's memory as the day her life truly began to change. She stood before the mirror in her London hotel room, adjusting her navy blue coat for the 3rd time, her hands trembling slightly with nerves. Today was the day she would meet the man who would one day be King of England, the man whose approval could determine her future with Harry. Charles had insisted on a private lunch at Clarence House, away from the prying eyes of the media and the formal protocols of Buckingham Palace. He wanted to meet the woman who had brought such joy to his son's life, and he wanted to do so in an environment where she could be herself rather than performing the role she thought was expected of her. Harry paced the length of Meghan's hotel room, his own anxiety evident in the way he kept checking his watch and adjusting his tie. He had spent the previous evening coaching Meghan on the subtle nuances of royal etiquette, but he could see that she was overthinking everything. "Just be yourself," he told her, taking her hands in his. "That's who he wants to meet. The woman I fell in love with, not some version of what you think a royal girlfriend should be." The drive to Clarence House felt both eternal and instantaneous. Meghan watched the London streets pass by through tinted windows, thinking about how dramatically her life had changed in the span of just a few months. 6 months earlier, she had been focused on her career and her humanitarian work, content with her independent life in Toronto. Now she was about to sit down to lunch with one of the most powerful men in the world, a man who could single-handedly determine whether her relationship with Harry would survive the pressures of royal life. Charles had spent his own morning in careful preparation. He had reviewed everything he knew about Meghan's background, her charitable work, and her family history. What struck him most was her genuine commitment to causes that aligned with his own passions for social justice and humanitarian aid. This was not a woman seeking to use the royal family for personal gain, this was someone who might actually strengthen their ability to make a positive impact on the world. The meeting was arranged in the morning room at Clarence House, a space that Charles had chosen specifically for its warm, welcoming atmosphere. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the carefully chosen artwork and personal photographs that made the room feel more like a family home than a royal residence. When Meghan entered the room, Charles was struck by her poise and natural grace. She moved with confidence but not arrogance, and, when she met his eyes, he saw intelligence and sincerity rather than calculation. The curtsy she offered was perfect, neither too deep nor too shallow, suggesting that Harry had indeed prepared her well for this moment. "Ms. Markle," Charles said, his voice warm with genuine welcome. "I've been very much looking forward to meeting you." "Your Royal Highness," Meghan replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Thank you so much for inviting me. Harry has told me so much about you." The lunch that followed was a masterclass in diplomatic conversation, but it was also something more personal and meaningful. Charles found himself genuinely enjoying Meghan's company. She was well informed about current events, passionate about her humanitarian work, and possessed a quick wit that kept pace with his own. More importantly, he could see why Harry had fallen in love with her. Meghan, for her part, discovered that Charles was nothing like the distant, formal figure she had expected. He asked thoughtful questions about her work with women's rights organizations and listened attentively to her answers. When she spoke about her time visiting military families, his eyes lit up with understanding and approval. This was a man who understood the weight of duty and service, and he recognized those same qualities in her. The conversation took a more personal turn when Charles inquired about her family. Meghan spoke honestly about her relationship with her father and the complexities of her family dynamics. She was refreshingly direct about the challenges she anticipated in merging her American sensibilities with British royal traditions. "I want you to know," she told him, "that I don't take this lightly. I understand that being with Harry means more than just being in love. It means serving something bigger than ourselves." Charles was deeply moved by her words. Here was a woman who understood the sacrifices that royal life would require, who was entering into this relationship with her eyes wide open. He found himself thinking of Diana, and how unprepared she had been for the realities of royal life. Meghan's maturity and self-awareness suggested that history would not repeat itself. The pivotal moment of their meeting came when Charles spoke directly about his concerns and hopes for Harry's future. He explained that Harry had always been the more vulnerable of his two sons, the one who felt emotions more deeply and struggled more with the constraints of royal duty. What Harry needed, Charles believed, was a partner who could be both his anchor and his champion. "Harry has found something in you that I haven't seen in him since his mother died," Charles said quietly. "He's found peace. And, for that alone, you have my gratitude." Meghan felt tears prick her eyes at his words. She had not expected such openness, such vulnerability from this man who was usually seen only in his official capacity. In that moment, she glimpsed the father behind the future king, the man who loved his sons and wanted nothing more than their happiness. Charles then made a decision that would prove crucial in shaping Meghan's future within the royal family. He offered her access to his personal staff for guidance and support, ensuring that she would have experienced advisors to help her navigate the complexities ahead. More importantly, he promised her his personal support and protection as she adjusted to life in the royal spotlight. "The press can be brutal," he warned her. "They will scrutinize everything you do, every word you speak, every outfit you wear. But you won't face that alone. This family protects its own." That promise would prove to be both a blessing and a complication in the years to come. Charles's protection would shield Meghan from some of the worst attacks, but it would also create expectations and obligations that would sometimes feel overwhelming. The lunch concluded with Charles walking Meghan through the private gardens of Clarence House. As they strolled among the carefully tended plants and flowers, he shared stories of his own journey to find love and acceptance within the royal framework. He spoke about Camilla and the long road they had traveled to reach their current happiness. "Love within our family is possible," he told her. "But it requires patience, understanding, and an absolute commitment to the greater good we serve." When Harry joined them for coffee, he could immediately see that the meeting had gone well. There was a relaxed warmth between his father and Meghan that suggested genuine mutual respect and affection. Charles had given his blessing, not just to their relationship but to Meghan herself. The ride back to her hotel was filled with relieved laughter and planning for the future. Harry was over the moon with happiness, and Meghan felt a deep sense of gratitude for the welcome she had received. She had worried that Charles might see her as an outsider, a threat to royal traditions. Instead, he had embraced her as a potential asset, someone who could bring fresh energy and perspectives to their ancient institution. That evening, Charles called Camilla to share his impressions of the meeting. "She's remarkable," he said. "Intelligent, committed, and absolutely devoted to Harry. I think she could be exactly what this family needs." Camilla, who had her own experience of being an outsider embraced by the royal family, was delighted by his assessment. She looked forward to meeting Meghan herself and offering her support during the challenges that lay ahead. Meanwhile, Meghan spent the evening video calling her mother Doria, sharing every detail of her afternoon with Charles. Her mother listened with pride and concern, understanding both the opportunities and the risks that this new chapter would bring. "Just remember who you are," Doria advised her daughter. "Don't lose yourself trying to become what you think they want you to be." It was advice that would echo in Meghan's mind many times in the months and years to come. Charles's acceptance had opened a door for her, but walking through it would require her to navigate an entirely new world with grace, dignity, and authenticity. The seeds that Charles had planted with his decision to welcome Meghan were beginning to grow. His pivotal role in her life had begun with that first lunch, where he had chosen to see her potential rather than focusing on the challenges her presence might bring. That choice would ripple through the royal family and the wider world in ways that none of them could have anticipated. As Meghan fell asleep that night in her London hotel room, she felt a profound sense of possibility mixed with trepidation. Charles had opened a door for her, but she would have to find her own way through it. The journey ahead would test her in ways she couldn't imagine, but it would also give her opportunities to make a difference on a scale she had never dreamed possible. The future stretched ahead of them all, full of promise and uncertainty in equal measure. The autumn of 2017 brought with it a sense of anticipation that seemed to permeate every corner of the royal residences. Charles found himself in the unique position of helping to orchestrate one of the most significant royal engagements in decades, knowing that his guidance during this crucial period would shape not only Meghan's future but the very image of the monarchy itself. The engagement ring had been Harry's idea, but Charles had played a crucial role in making it happen. When Harry approached him about using diamonds from Diana's personal collection, Charles didn't hesitate to give his permission. He understood the profound symbolism of incorporating Diana's legacy into this new chapter of Harry's life, and he saw it as a way to honor his late wife while blessing his son's future. Meghan knew nothing of these behind-the-scenes arrangements when Harry proposed to her during a quiet evening at Nottingham Cottage in early November. She was roasting a chicken, he was opening a bottle of wine, and, in that moment of domestic tranquility, he dropped to one knee and changed both of their lives forever. The ring was breathtaking, but it was the story behind it that brought tears to Meghan's eyes. The larger diamond was from Botswana, a country that had become special to both of them during their early courtship. The two smaller stones flanking it were from Diana's personal collection, a connection to Harry's mother that made Meghan feel both honored and overwhelmed with responsibility. Charles's reaction to the engagement news was one of pure joy mixed with careful calculation. He immediately understood the global significance of this moment. Here was an American actress, a woman of mixed race, a divorcee, joining the British royal family. It was unprecedented, and it would require careful management to ensure that the transition was smooth for everyone involved. The official announcement was scheduled for November 27, 2017, but the weeks leading up to it were filled with intensive preparation. Charles personally oversaw much of this process, understanding that how Meghan was presented to the world would determine the public's reception of her and, by extension, the royal family's evolution. He arranged for Meghan to work with the palace's most experienced communications team, people who understood the intricate dance between transparency and privacy that royal life required. But, more than that, he made himself personally available for guidance and support, something that surprised many within the palace who were accustomed to his more formal approach to family matters. Meghan found herself living between two worlds during this period. In Toronto, she was finishing her final scenes for Suits, saying goodbye to a character and a life that had defined her for 7 years. The cast and crew had become her family, and leaving them felt like closing a chapter of her identity that she would never be able to reopen. In London, she was undergoing what she privately called her royal education. Charles had insisted that she receive comprehensive briefings on constitutional history, Commonwealth relations, and the delicate balance between the royal family's ceremonial duties and their actual political influence. He wanted her to understand that being a member of the royal family meant being a representative of British values and interests around the world. The sessions were intensive and, sometimes overwhelming. Meghan would spend hours learning about the nuances of protocol, the significance of various ceremonial traditions, and the expectations that would govern her public appearances. But Charles made sure that she also understood the opportunities her position would provide to advance causes she cared about. "You have a platform now," he told her during one of their private meetings. "A global platform that comes with enormous responsibility but also enormous potential for good. The question is how you choose to use it." Those words resonated deeply with Meghan, who had always believed in using whatever influence she had to make a positive difference. She began to envision how she could merge her passion for women's rights and social justice with the traditional charitable work of the royal family. Charles also took it upon himself to prepare the rest of the family for the changes that Meghan's presence would bring. He had frank conversations with William and Catherine about the importance of presenting a united front, understanding that any hint of family discord would be magnified by the media. He spoke with his siblings about embracing Meghan as a full member of the family, not a temporary addition. The Queen, who had initially been somewhat reserved about the unconventional nature of Harry's choice, was gradually won over by Charles's enthusiastic reports about Meghan's character and capabilities. During their private meetings, Charles emphasized Meghan's intelligence, work ethic, and genuine commitment to service. He painted a picture of a woman who could help modernize the monarchy while respecting its traditions. The public announcement of the engagement was a media sensation that exceeded everyone's expectations. The photographs of the happy couple, the details about the ring, and the revelation of their love story captured the world's imagination. But it was the official engagement interview that truly introduced Meghan to the global audience. Charles had personally coached both Harry and Meghan for this interview, understanding that it would set the tone for public perception of their relationship and Meghan's role within the royal family. He helped them craft responses that were both authentic and appropriate, personal yet respectful of royal protocols. When Meghan spoke about her excitement to hit the ground running with her royal duties, those were words that Charles had helped her understand and embrace. He had spent hours with her discussing the various charitable organizations and causes that the royal family supported, helping her identify areas where her background and interests could make the greatest impact. The global response to the engagement was overwhelmingly positive, but Charles knew that the real challenges lay ahead. The engagement period would be a time of intense scrutiny, and Meghan would need all the support and guidance he could provide. He arranged for her to spend Christmas with the royal family at Sandringham, another break with tradition that demonstrated his commitment to fully integrating her into the family. The invitation was both an honor and a test, as Meghan would be expected to participate in the complex web of traditions that defined the royal Christmas celebration. Meghan approached the Christmas visit with characteristic thoroughness, studying the protocols and preparing thoughtful gifts for each member of the family. Charles had advised her to choose presents that were personal but not overly expensive, something that showed she understood the family's values while revealing her own personality. Her gift to Charles was particularly meaningful, a book about the intersection of environmental conservation and community development, subjects that represented two of his greatest passions. When he opened it on Christmas morning and saw her thoughtful inscription, he was deeply moved by her effort to understand and connect with his interests. The Christmas visit was a success, but it also revealed the challenges that lay ahead. The intense media attention was unlike anything Meghan had experienced, with photographers and reporters documenting her every public moment. Charles watched carefully as she navigated this new reality, ready to offer advice and support when needed. During quiet moments at Sandringham, Charles and Meghan had several profound conversations about the future. He spoke honestly about the difficulties she would face, the criticism that would come from unexpected quarters, and the personal sacrifices that royal life would require. "There will be moments when you question everything," he warned her. "When the pressure feels overwhelming and the criticism feels unfair. In those moments, remember why you chose this path and what you hope to accomplish." Meghan listened carefully to his advice, understanding that he spoke from decades of experience navigating the complexities of royal life. She was grateful for his honesty and his willingness to share both the challenges and the rewards of the position she was about to assume. As the new year dawned, wedding preparations began in earnest. Charles played an active role in planning the ceremony, understanding that this would be a global event that would define how the world saw the modern monarchy. He advocated for elements that would reflect Meghan's heritage and values while maintaining the dignity and tradition that royal weddings required. The decision to hold the wedding at St. George's Chapel rather than Westminster Abbey was partly influenced by Charles's desire to create a more intimate celebration that would feel personal rather than purely ceremonial. He wanted the day to be about Harry and Meghan's love story, not just a state occasion. During the months leading up to the wedding, Charles became increasingly impressed with Meghan's dedication and adaptability. She threw herself into learning about British history and Commonwealth relations with an enthusiasm that surprised even him. Her first official engagement with him, visiting Prince's Trust Centers, revealed her natural ability to connect with people and her genuine interest in the charitable work of the royal family. The media coverage during this period was intense and not always fair. Charles watched with growing concern as some outlets began to publish increasingly critical stories about Meghan's family background and previous relationships. He made sure that the palace's communications team was actively defending her against unfair attacks while preparing her for the reality that such criticism would be a permanent feature of her new life. "The institution will protect you," he assured her during a particularly difficult week when tabloid coverage had been especially harsh. "But you also need to develop your own armor. The criticism comes with the territory, but so does the ability to make a real difference in people's lives." As the wedding date approached, Charles felt a mixture of pride and protectiveness toward Meghan. She had embraced her new role with grace and determination, but he could see the toll that the intense scrutiny was taking on her. He made a mental note to ensure that she would have continued support after the wedding, understanding that the pressure would only intensify once she officially became a member of the royal family. The transformation that Charles had initiated by welcoming Meghan into the family was nearly complete. She had evolved from Harry's girlfriend to a soon-to-be princess, but, more importantly, she had become a daughter-in-law whom Charles respected and cared for deeply. His pivotal role in changing her life was about to culminate in a royal wedding that would capture the world's attention and launch her into a position of global influence that few could have imagined when she first walked through the doors of Clarence House just over a year earlier. The morning of May 19, 2018, dawned bright and clear over Windsor Castle, as if the weather itself was celebrating the historic day that lay ahead. Charles stood in his private quarters at Windsor Castle, adjusting his ceremonial uniform while reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had led to this moment. In just a few hours, he would walk Meghan down the aisle of St. George's Chapel, a gesture that would symbolize not only his acceptance of her into the family but his pivotal role in facilitating her transformation from American actress to British royalty. The decision for Charles to escort Meghan had come about just days before the wedding, when it became clear that her father Thomas would not be able to attend due to health complications and media pressures. The offer from Charles was both spontaneous and deeply considered. He understood the symbolic weight of the gesture and wanted to ensure that Meghan felt supported and protected on the most important day of her life. Meghan, meanwhile, was in the state apartments at Windsor Castle, surrounded by her mother Doria, her closest friends, and a team of stylists preparing her for the ceremony. The wedding dress, designed by Claire Waite-Keller for Givenchy, was a masterpiece of understated elegance that perfectly captured Meghan's personal style while respecting royal traditions. As she looked at herself in the mirror, she thought about how dramatically her life had changed since that first nervous lunch with Charles at Clarence House. The past year and a half had been a whirlwind of transformation, much of it guided by Charles's steady hand and wise counsel. He had been more than a future father-in-law. He had been a mentor, a protector, and a bridge between her previous life and her royal future. Without his support and guidance, she knew that the transition would have been far more difficult and potentially unsuccessful. The chapel itself was a testament to Charles's involvement in the wedding planning. He had insisted on including elements that honored both British traditions and Meghan's American heritage. The gospel choir, the stirring sermon by Bishop Michael Curry, and the incorporation of flowers from the Commonwealth countries all reflected his understanding that this wedding needed to represent the monarchy's evolution while celebrating its enduring values. As the ceremony began, Charles felt a profound sense of pride and responsibility. Walking beside Meghan down the aisle, he could see the happiness radiating from Harry's face and the tears of joy in the Queen's eyes. This was more than a wedding. It was a moment of transformation for the entire royal family, and Charles knew that his decisions over the past 2 years had made this moment possible. The service itself was a beautiful blend of tradition and innovation. exactly as Charles had envisioned. When Bishop Curry spoke about the revolutionary power of love, Charles thought about his own journey to find acceptance and happiness within the royal framework. He saw parallels between his relationship with Camilla and what Harry and Meghan were beginning, and he silently promised himself that he would do everything in his power to ensure their path was smoother than his own had been. The moment when Charles handed Meghan to Harry was captured by photographers around the world, but its deeper significance was understood by those who knew the behind-the-scenes story. This was Charles officially transferring his care and protection of Meghan to his son, while also symbolically embracing her as a full member of the House of Windsor. The reception that followed was a celebration that reflected Charles's careful balance between formality and warmth. He had insisted on speeches that would be personal rather than purely ceremonial, and his own toast to the newlyweds was filled with humor, affection, and hope for their future together. He spoke about Meghan's grace under pressure, her commitment to service, and her obvious love for Harry, painting a picture of a woman who had not just married into the royal family but had enhanced it. The global response to the wedding exceeded everyone's expectations. Over 2 billion people watched the ceremony worldwide, and the coverage was overwhelmingly positive. The image of Charles escorting Meghan was seen as a powerful symbol of the monarchy's ability to evolve and embrace change while maintaining its essential character. But Charles knew that the real work was just beginning. The wedding had been the culmination of Meghan's transformation, but it was also the starting point for her life as the Duchess of Sussex. The challenges ahead would be different from those she had faced during the engagement period, and Charles was determined to continue providing the support and guidance she would need. The first few months after the wedding were a period of intense activity and learning for Meghan. Charles arranged for her to undertake joint engagements with different members of the royal family, allowing her to learn from their experience while gradually building her own public profile. Her first solo engagement, visiting the Hub Community Kitchen in West London, was carefully planned with Charles's input to showcase her natural ability to connect with people and her commitment to community service. The Commonwealth tour to Australia, Fiji, Tonga, and New Zealand in October 2018 was another opportunity for Charles to guide Meghan's development as a working royal. He spent hours briefing her on the complexities of Commonwealth relations and the delicate balance required when representing the Crown in former colonies. His advice about respecting local customs while maintaining royal dignity served her well during the highly successful tour. The pregnancy announcement that came during the Australia tour brought Charles immense joy, but also new responsibilities. He understood that becoming grandparents would bring Harry and Meghan closer to the heart of the royal family while also creating new pressures and expectations. He was determined to ensure that Meghan felt supported throughout her pregnancy and that the media attention didn't become overwhelming. Charles's role as protector became even more important as media coverage of Meghan began to shift from universally positive to increasingly critical. He watched with growing concern as stories about palace tensions and family disputes began to dominate headlines. Many of these stories were exaggerated or completely fabricated, but Charles understood how damaging they could be to both Meghan's well-being and the royal family's reputation. The birth of Archie in May 2019 was a moment of pure joy for Charles, who had long looked forward to becoming a grandfather again. His reaction to meeting his newest grandson was one of immediate and profound love. The private baptism that followed was organized partly at Charles's suggestion, as he believed that Meghan and Harry deserved to celebrate this milestone without the intense media scrutiny that had surrounded previous royal baptisms. However, the period following Archie's birth also revealed the growing strains that were developing beneath the surface. Charles began to notice changes in both Harry and Meghan's demeanor during family gatherings. They seemed increasingly isolated and defensive, and he sensed that they were struggling with aspects of royal life that they hadn't anticipated. The documentary Harry and Meghan, An African Journey, which aired in October 2019, was a wake-up call for Charles. Seeing his daughter-in-law's obvious distress as she spoke about the challenges of royal life and motherhood in the public eye, he realized that his protection and guidance hadn't been enough to shield her from the psychological toll of constant scrutiny. Charles immediately reached out to both Harry and Meghan, offering additional support and resources. He arranged for them to have access to professional counseling and suggested a temporary reduction in their public engagements to allow them time to adjust to parenthood away from the spotlight. But he could sense that deeper issues were at play, problems that went beyond what additional support could solve. The crisis came to a head in early 2020 when Harry and Meghan announced their intention to step back from their roles as senior working royals. For Charles, this was both a personal and institutional crisis. He felt that he had failed in his role as protector and guide, that despite all his efforts to smooth their path, he hadn't been able to prevent this outcome. The negotiations that followed were complex and emotional. Charles found himself torn between his love for his son and daughter-in-law and his duty to protect the institution of the monarchy. The discussions about their future roles, financial arrangements, and public profiles were some of the most difficult conversations of his life. Throughout this period, Charles maintained his relationship with Meghan, even as public narratives suggested growing family divisions. He understood that she was struggling with aspects of royal life that she hadn't fully anticipated, despite all the preparation and guidance he had provided. Her desire for independence and control over her public image conflicted with the institutional requirements of royal duty in ways that proved impossible to reconcile. The final agreement, reached after weeks of negotiation, allowed Harry and Meghan to step back from their royal duties while maintaining their titles and Charles's financial support during a transition period. For Charles, it was a compromise that prioritized family relationships over institutional preferences, reflecting his continued commitment to Meghan's well-being even as she chose a different path. The COVID-19 pandemic that dominated 2020 provided an opportunity for reflection and gradual healing. Charles, who contracted the virus himself early in the pandemic, used his recovery period to think about what had gone wrong and what lessons could be learned. He maintained regular contact with Harry and Meghan in California, offering support as they navigated their new independent lives while dealing with continued media scrutiny. The interview with Oprah Winfrey in March 2021 was perhaps the most challenging moment in Charles's relationship with Meghan. Hearing her speak about feeling unsupported and unprotected during her time as a working royal was deeply painful for him, as he had genuinely believed that he was providing the guidance and care she needed. The allegations about conversations regarding Archie's skin color were particularly distressing, though Charles never publicly responded to these claims. Despite the public nature of their difficulties, Charles never stopped caring about Meghan's welfare or feeling responsible for her experience within the royal family. His pivotal role in changing her life had begun with welcoming her into the family and continued through his ongoing efforts to support her, even when their paths diverged dramatically from what anyone had originally envisioned. The birth of Lilibet in June 2021 brought a moment of joy and reconciliation. Charles was honored that Harry and Meghan chose to name their daughter after the Queen, seeing it as a gesture of respect for the family despite their complicated relationship with the institution. His private congratulations to the couple were warm and heartfelt, reflecting his continued love for them both. As Charles prepared for his own coronation and the responsibilities of kingship, he often reflected on his relationship with Meghan and the lessons learned from their journey together. His role in changing her life had been profound and irreversible, transforming an American actress into a global figure who would forever be connected to the British royal family. The story was not the fairy tale that many had hoped for, but it was a deeply human narrative of love, loss, misunderstanding, and growth. Charles's pivotal role had been motivated by the best of intentions, but it had also revealed the limitations of even the most well-meaning efforts to prepare someone for the unique challenges of royal life. Looking toward the future, Charles remained hopeful that time would heal the wounds that had developed and that his relationship with both Harry and Meghan could continue to evolve in positive ways. His door remained open to them, just as it had been from the very beginning when he first decided to welcome Meghan into their family with open arms and an open heart.